You walk into a room, and before a single word is spoken, you know. You feel the heavy, static charge of an argument that just ended, or the jagged, nervous rhythm of someone hiding a secret. For years, you have moved through the world like a raw nerve, absorbing every stray emotion, every hidden intent, every unspoken sorrow of the people around you. You have been the therapist, the healer, the shoulder to cry on, and the sponge that soaks up the toxicity of others so they don't have to carry it. But recently, something has shifted. There is a new sensation taking root in the center of your chest, or rather, a lack of sensation. A sudden, terrifying coldness. You look at a friend in crisis, someone you would have once stayed up all night to comfort, and you feel nothing. You listen to their complaints, the same cycles of drama you have analyzed 1,000 times, and instead of compassion, you feel a sharp, metallic irritation. You want to walk away. You want to shut the door. You wonder, with a rising panic, if you are losing your humanity. You ask yourself the question that haunts every deeply sensitive person eventually. Have I become a monster? Have I turned into the very narcissists I spent my life avoiding? Let me stop you right there. Breathe. You are not broken. You are not a sociopath in the making. What you are experiencing is not a loss of soul. It is an evolution of spirit. You are undergoing a necessary, biological, and spiritual recalibration. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist, spent a lifetime mapping the treacherous terrain of the human psyche, and he would not call this coldness a sin. He would call it a survival strategy. You are not behind the rest of the world, losing your capacity to love. You are, in fact, 3 steps ahead. To understand why this numbness is actually a superpower waiting to be harnessed, we must look at what is happening beneath the hood of your psychology. You have spent your life operating with what we might call unfiltered resonance. When you see someone in pain, your brain doesn't just observe it, it replicates it. Modern neuroscience confirms what Jung intuited decades ago. Your mirror neurons are firing at a hyperactive rate, and your cortisol levels spike as if the trauma were happening to you. You aren't just empathizing, you are hemorrhaging energy. But the human machine was not built to run on maximum voltage forever. When a circuit carries too much current, a breaker flips to prevent the house from burning down. That coldness you feel? That is your emotional firewall. It is your psyche's desperate attempt to save you from total, systemic failure. However, Jung warns us that this is a dangerous crossroads. If you do not understand this mechanism, you will misinterpret it. You will think you are becoming cruel. And in your guilt, you might force yourself to open the gates again, letting the floodwaters back in, drowning yourself to prove you are still good. Or, conversely, you might retreat entirely, locking yourself in a tower of cynicism, convinced that humanity is nothing but a parasite feeding on your light. Neither of these paths leads to wisdom. There is a third option, the path of the conscious observer. This is where the empath steps ahead of the crowd. Consider why you feel this sudden detachment. It is usually not because you don't care. It is because you have already simulated the outcome. Because of your high sensitivity, your intuition, a core function in Jungian typology, is working faster than the present moment. You hear a person's problem, and in a split second, your mind flashes forward 3 steps. Step 1, you see the pattern of their behavior. Step 2, you predict the inevitable consequence of their choices. Step 3, you realize that no amount of your emotional energy will change the outcome until they decide to change. While they are still stuck in step 1, grappling with the immediate drama, you are already standing at step 3, looking at the finished equation. The coldness you feel is the disconnect between their slow-motion reality and your high-speed intuition. You are waiting for them to catch up to a conclusion you reached 10 minutes or 10 months ago. This is the prophetic burden. You see the car crash before the driver even turns the wheel, and because you see it, you naturally stop investing energy in the hope that the road will suddenly straighten. This is not malice, it is efficiency. It is your soul refusing to pay for a subscription to a magazine it has already read cover to cover. But this realization brings a heavy weight. It isolates you. When you stop playing the role of the emotional garbage disposal for society, people get uncomfortable. They sense your withdrawal. They might accuse you of changing, of being distant or arrogant. And because you are an empath, these accusations cut deep. You have built your identity on being the helper, the savior. Who are you if you are not suffering for others? Jung believed that the first half of life is often spent building an ego, a persona that fits into the world. For you, that persona was the helper. But the second half of life is for individuation, the process of becoming your true, undivided self. To do this, you must integrate the shadow. And for the empath, the shadow often contains the very things you were taught to repress: boundaries, selfishness, anger, and the capacity to say no without explanation. The 3 steps ahead phenomenon is your shadow knocking on the door. It is demanding that you stop merging with everyone else and start standing distinctly within your own frame. It is asking you to trade absorption for observation. Let's look at this through a specific lens, a pattern you might recognize. Let's speak of a figure we will call the eternal victim. Perhaps you have a friend, a family member, or a partner who fits this mold. They are constantly in a crisis. The world is always happening to them. For years, you provided the solutions. You offered the late-night talks, the money, the advice, the emotional validation. You poured your essence into their leaking cup. But recently, when they called with the latest catastrophe, you felt that strange, flat silence in your mind. You knew exactly what they were going to say. You knew exactly why it happened. And you knew that next week, it would happen again. In that moment of silence, you were not failing them. You were experiencing compassion, bankruptcy. You had simply spent every penny of emotional currency you had allocated to that specific account. Jung would suggest that this bankruptcy is a gift. It forces you to stop enabling the cycle. By withdrawing your energy, you are actually doing the only thing that might help them. You are removing the cushion that stops them from hitting rock bottom. But the brain struggles to accept this logic. The primitive part of your mind, the part that craves tribal acceptance, screams that withdrawal equals exile. It tells you that if you are not useful, you are not lovable. This is the lie we must dismantle. The empath who is 3 steps ahead sees the truth, that blind empathy is often just a sophisticated form of codependency. True empathy requires a self, if you are entirely dissolved in the other person's experience. There is no you left to pull them out of the quicksand. You are just 2 people sinking together. So, how do we transition from the exhausted sponge to the strategic visionary? How do you inhabit this new, colder space without losing your warmth? We must break down the signs that you are entering this phase of higher consciousness, so you can stop fighting it and start navigating it. There are distinct stages to this transformation. You might be in the middle of one right now. The first stage is the saturation point. This is often physical. It is the fatigue that sleep cannot touch. It is the desire to sit in a dark room and stare at a wall. Your nervous system is signaling that your input-output ratio is critically imbalanced. You are taking in terabytes of emotional data, but only processing kilobytes. The glitch you feel, the brain fog, the irritability, is the system lagging. Reframing this is crucial. You are not lazy. You are in system reboot. Your psyche is demanding a period of low stimulation to archive the massive amount of data you have collected on human nature. You are not checking out of life. You are processing the lessons of the last decade, so you don't have to repeat them. The second stage is the intuitive disconnect. This is the phase we touched on earlier, where you see the end of the movie while everyone else is watching the opening credits. You find it hard to engage in small talk because it feels painfully inefficient. You struggle to feign surprise when someone tells you news you sensed coming months ago. The danger here is arrogance. It is easy to look at people still stuck in their loops and feel superior. Why can't they see it, you ask? It's so obvious. Jung warned that when we identify too closely with our intuition, we become inflated. We float above reality. The reframe here, this is not superiority. This is pattern recognition mastery. You have become an expert in human behavior, but just because you are an expert doesn't mean you can force others to learn faster. You must learn to hold your insight lightly, like a lantern, rather than wielding it like a gavel. You are 3 steps ahead, yes, but you must wait for them on the landing, or you will walk the path alone. The third stage is the mirror breaker. For years, you have functioned as a perfect social mirror. When someone smiled, you smiled. When they were anxious, you became a soothing balm. You adjusted your frequency to match the room so seamlessly that you often forgot what your own frequency sounded like. This is the chameleon reflex, a survival trait developed in childhood to monitor the emotional climate of a volatile home. But in this stage, the mirror cracks. You find yourself physically unable to fake the reaction that is expected of you. You sit at a dinner table, listening to a conversation that feels shallow or performative, and you cannot summon the energy to nod along. A friend tells you a story where they are clearly the villain, expecting you to validate their victimhood, and for the first time, you stay silent. You might even offer a challenge. Is that really what happened? You ask. The room goes quiet. The dynamic shifts. You feel a sudden spike of guilt. Why was I so harsh? But underneath that guilt is a strange, solid ground. You are no longer reflecting. You are projecting. You are becoming opaque. The people around you accustomed to your infinite malleability will panic. They might ask, "What's wrong? You seem different." They are sensing the loss of their reflection in your eyes. They can no longer use you to verify their own egos. This is not a loss of social skills. This is authenticity calibration. You are no longer willing to betray your own reality to maintain a comfortable illusion for someone else. You are trading agreeability for integrity. The fourth stage is the empathic void. This is the most terrifying phase, and the one that drives most empaths to seek therapy or isolation. In this stage, you look at the suffering of the world, the news, the homeless person on the street, the crying child, and you feel a sudden, hollow distance. The intense, visceral tearing in your chest that used to define your existence is gone. You panic. You think, "I have lost my light. I have become cold-hearted." You try to force the feelings back, wringing your heart like a dry sponge, desperate for a drop of tears just to prove you are still human. But listen closely. Jung would tell us that the psyche is a self-regulating system. You have spent decades in a state of hyperarousal, your amygdala constantly flagging other people's pain as your own survival threat. The void is not the death of your empathy, it is the construction of a psychic skin. Just as physical skin protects our internal organs from infection while still allowing us to feel heat and touch, this psychic skin allows you to perceive emotion without being infected by it. The void is the space between you and the other. It is the necessary gap where wisdom can grow. Without this gap, you are not helping anyone, you are drowning with them. This is not numbness. This is strategic emotional conservation. You are moving from a reactive state, where you are tossed by every wave, to a responsive state, where you choose which waves to ride. Perhaps you are like Heinrich, a classic archetype of the exhausted healer. Heinrich was the man everyone called at 2 a.m. He was the good listener. He prided himself on his ability to endure other people's chaos. But Heinrich found that the more he gave, the more people demanded. He became a magnet for energy vampires, not because they were evil, but because he was an open tap. One day, Heinrich simply stopped answering the phone. He didn't plan it. His body just refused to pick it up. He spent weeks in guilt, convinced he was abandoning his duty. But in that silence, Heinrich realized something profound. His friends survived without him. The world kept turning. The crises resolved themselves, or they didn't. His intervention had never been the linchpin he thought it was. It was merely a buffer. By stepping back, Heinrich forced the people around him to face their own shadows. His coldness was the catalyst for their growth. If you recognize this coldness in yourself, if you see Heinrich's silence in your own recent behavior, you do not need to prove your goodness to anyone. You do not need to explain why you didn't answer the text. You do not need to justify your need for space. Just breathe and observe. Let the guilt rise. Acknowledge it as a phantom from your past conditioning, and let it pass. You are safe in this silence. You are allowed to exist without serving. This silence leads us to the specific trap that catches the empath who is 3 steps ahead. It is the trap of the unsolicited savior. Because you see the outcome before it happens, because you are 3 steps ahead, you have likely developed a habit of intervening prematurely. You see your brother dating someone who is clearly wrong for him. You see your boss making a decision that will cause the team to fail in 6 months. You see a friend spiraling into an addiction they haven't yet admitted to. Your instinct, driven by that high-speed intuition, is to jump in, to warn them, to fix the road before they trip. Don't go that way, you plead. Here is the map. I have already seen the destination. But they don't listen. They call you pessimistic. They call you controlling. And then, 6 months later, when the crash happens exactly as you predicted, they resent you even more. Why? Because nobody forgives the person who said, "I told you so," even if you never speak the words. Your very presence becomes a reminder of their failure to listen. Jung spoke of the danger of inflation, not just of the ego, but of the role we play. When you try to save people from their own karma, from the consequences of their own choices, you are stepping out of your role as a human and attempting to play the role of fate. You are trying to rob them of their lesson. The empath's 3 steps ahead vision is not given to you so you can steer the ship for everyone else. It is given to you so you can navigate your own vessel through the storm while they learn to sail theirs. This brings us to the 5th, and perhaps most subtle stage, the auditor. In this phase, you begin to audit your relationships with a ruthless, mathematical precision. You start to notice the transactional balance. You realize that for years, you have been operating on a deficit. You have been paying 90% of the emotional cost for 10% of the intimacy. You start to categorize people not by how much you love them, but by how safe they are for your nervous system. You identify the chaos agents, the people who are addicted to their own turmoil. You identify the passive consumers, the ones who take your advice, nod, and do nothing, only to return next week with the same complaint. And you begin to cut. This is not the dramatic door slam of a temper tantrum. It is a quiet, administrative decision. You stop initiating plans. You stop asking probing questions that invite them to dump their trauma. You reduce the duration of your interactions. The brain science here is fascinating. When you stop engaging in codependent loops, your brain stops producing the oxytocin-dopamine cocktail associated with bonding through shared pain. You literally start to detox from the addiction of being needed. This withdrawal feels lonely at first. You look at your phone, and it is quiet. You look at your calendar, and it is empty. But this emptiness is not a void to be filled. It is a sanctuary of potential. It is the first time in your life that your energy is circulating within your own system rather than leaking out to stabilize others. You are not losing friends. You are shedding dead weight to prepare for an ascent. However, there is a final, critical barrier you must cross to fully integrate this power. It is the barrier that separates the bitter loner from the enlightened observer. Many empaths get stuck in the bitterness. They embrace the coldness too much. They decide that because they see the ugly truths of human nature, the selfishness, the greed, the unconscious patterns, that humanity is not worth engaging with. They use their 3 steps ahead insight to mock the world from a safe distance. This is the trap of cynicism, and it is the shadow side of your gift. If you stay here, you do not become wise, you become brittle. You become a fortress with no gate. To pass through this final gate, you must do something counterintuitive. You must use your foresight, not to judge, but to forgive. You must realize that the people who are 3 steps behind are not stupid. They are simply asleep. And you cannot wake someone up by shaking them. You can only wake them up by being so awake yourself that your presence disturbs their slumber. This leads us to the ultimate transformation, the moment where the coldness ignites into a new kind of fire, a fire that gives light without burning the wood. So, how do we escape the fortress of cynicism? How do we come back down from the mountain of insight and walk among the people without losing our peace? The answer lies in what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming a single, homogeneous being. But let's use a term that fits your specific experience as a modern empath. We will call this final state radiant detachment. Radiant detachment is the ability to care deeply without bleeding out. It is the realization that you can stand next to someone in a deep hole, hold a light for them, and offer them a ladder, without jumping into the hole to keep them company. For years, you believed that love meant jumping in. You thought that if you didn't get dirty, you didn't care. But your new coldness, this ability to remain standing while others fall, is not a lack of love. It is the only thing that makes true love possible. Because if you jump in the hole, there is no one left at the top to pull them out. To practice radiant detachment, you must change how you use your 3 steps ahead vision. In the past, when you saw the inevitable crash coming, you used that information to panic. You tried to control the driver. You tried to grab the wheel. You exhausted yourself trying to alter a destiny that belonged to someone else. Now, you will use that foresight differently. You will use it for strategic preparation. When you see a friend walking toward a mistake you have predicted, you do not intervene. You do not preach. You simply prepare the first aid kit. You wait. You conserve your energy. And when they inevitably crash, and they come to you broken and confused, you are not exhausted from trying to stop them. You are fresh. You are calm. You are ready to listen, not with the frantic energy of a savior, but with the stable presence of a witness. This is the shift from sympathetic enmeshment, feeling with them to the point of pain, to compassionate presence, feeling for them while remaining anchored in yourself. Science supports this distinction. When you practice this kind of detached compassion, your brain shifts activity away from the pain centers that mimic the other person's distress and moves it toward the prefrontal cortex and the reward systems associated with caregiving. You literally move from suffering with to caring for. You stop burning cortisol and start generating oxytocin. This is the sweet result we promised at the beginning. You become the eye of the storm. The winds of other people's chaos spin violently around you, the drama, the accusations, the crises, but they do not touch you. You remain still, and because you are still, you become a safe harbor. People will stop coming to you to dump their garbage because they will realize you are no longer a trash can. They will start coming to you for clarity because you are a mirror that has finally been wiped clean. This brings us back to the question that started this journey. Have I become a monster? Number. You have become a guardian of limits. Jung taught that the shadow is not just a repository of evil. It is the source of our creativity, our instinct, and our power. By accepting your coldness, you have integrated your shadow. You have accepted that you have a limit. You have accepted that you are not infinite. And in accepting your limits, you have found your power. The empath who is 3 steps ahead is not better than the rest of the world, but they are distinct. You are the scout. You are the watchman on the wall. It is a lonely post, yes. It requires you to see things that others ignore. It requires you to feel the weather changing before the first drop of rain falls. But do not let the loneliness make you bitter. Do not let the foresight make you arrogant. Take this new numbness, this emotional firewall, and thank it. It saved your life. It stopped you from dissolving into the collective ocean of unconscious emotion. It allowed you to harden just enough to form a self. Now, your task is not to destroy that wall, but to put a gate in it, a gate that you control. You decide who comes in. You decide when to open it, and most importantly, you decide when to close it. You are not cold. You are simply no longer burning yourself to keep others warm. You have graduated from the chaotic school of absorption to the disciplined art of observation. So, the next time you feel that flat, metallic silence when everyone else is screaming, do not be afraid. Do not force a tear. Do not apologize for your stability. Stand tall in that silence. That silence is the sound of your soul finally claiming its own space. You have seen the pattern. You have predicted the outcome. You have done the work. Now, all that is left is to watch, to wait, and to be. The world does not need more people who are drowning in empathy. It needs more people who can swim. It needs you, strong, separate, and whole. Accept your vision. Accept your distance. It is not a defect. It is the next stage of your evolution. See you in the next dimension.